It's 12:01 p.m. I'd like to call this special meeting of the Economic Development Corporation to order. Blanca, if you don't mind doing roll call.
Yes. Hiren Govin, President.
Present.
Roland Gomez, Vice President. Veronica Gonzalez, Secretary.
Present.
Aaron Ronnie Rivera, Treasurer.
Present.
Daniel Dan Diaz, Council Member.
Present.
Sabrina Walker Hernandez, Director. Raul Resendez, Director. And we have quorum.
All right. And certified public notice, please.
The notice was posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act on April 13th at 4:20 p.m.
Thank you. And Omar, if you don't mind explaining what conflict of interest is.
Sure. So under state law, a conflict of interest exists if a member or certain family members of the member have a qualifying financial interest. If there is a conflict of interest, you can't participate in the item and you can't discuss or vote on it. So are there any conflicts to disclose at this time?
No.
Nope.
Great.
Appreciate it. Moving on. Before we go to public comments, I just want to thank everyone for joining us on their lunch break. We just wanted to go down and get a rundown of get an update on the ACE building. That being said, I'd like to open up the floor for public comments. If anybody on Zoom or in the audience would like to speak.
Yes, we have Ashley Custer, who signed up for public comment.
Afternoon, Ashley.
Good afternoon, EDC Board. My name is Ashley Custer. I'm the Director of Communications Media here with the City of Edinburgh. I just wanted to come up here, and I know I've received a couple of questions about our PEG channel. And so PEG channel stands for Public Educational Government Access Channel. And our channel is on Spectrum 1300. It's actually where some of these meetings are streamed live so that, the general public can see, what action's being taken and what's taking place here in their city. So the reason why I'm bringing it up today is just to sort of clarify. I know our department at some point was being considered to move over to the ACE building, and there was discussion about utilizing the funding that we receive for the PEG channel. I just want to clarify that the PEG funds are heavily restricted, as is the content that ends up on this channel. So, for example, with these funds, they're specific to the revenue that's generated from Spectrum 1300. They give us a small portion of that. I believe it is quarterly. And those funds are only able to be used to be invested back into the channel. So, for example, equipment, but the equipment must be used to create content that ends up, again, on Spectrum 1300. So I think the possibility of having anyone from the outside, it's a beautiful idea of having these aspiring artists come in to utilize equipment, unless that content, again, ends up on the channel, and we really are not going to be able to share that equipment. So I just kind of wanted to make that clear, because I think that there maybe was some confusion about that in the past, and we did receive some of those questions. And again, the content is very restricted on the channel. We cannot have any political content, religious content. We're very, very careful about, what ends up on there. So if you have any other questions, you can definitely feel free to reach out to us. Our main goal is, again, to make sure that people are able to view meetings just like this one, our city council meeting. And the other concern I had as far as us possibly moving over there is a lot of the equipment that we have to run these meetings is here at City Hall, and this building is across the street. So I don't know if you have any other questions for me. I know it's public comment, but definitely, if you all feel the need to reach out, you definitely can.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Sure.
How much do you get in PEG funding?
So currently in our account, we have...
Sorry, I hate to interrupt, but point of order, public comments, we can't respond back.
Yeah, that's what I asked, if we could ask a question.
Correct. Yeah. So generally, public comment is not an interactive period. You're free to ask questions if you would like, but as a kind of normal policy, it's not for a question and answer session.
Okay.
Am I able to answer the question?
If you would like, and
Okay,
if
sure.
the members are okay with that.
Are you all okay with me answering the question?
Yes,
Okay, yeah.
yes, and I just want to add, the only reason I'm saying that is there's very passionate things brought up on public comment. I, for one, wish we could respond. As a matter of fact, I've asked the staff to add in our city agenda that we are not allowed to respond because it just seems like a cold interaction, but it's really just the rules of the Robert Rules. And
Yeah.
I just think if we keep it across the board, it'll help us, the city side.
So we have $485,000 currently in our PEG fund. Council recently approved for us to spend just under $40,000 of that in order for us to replace some of the equipment that we have that is outdated and also to equip some of our new staff members that we recently added to our team. So minus, 40,000, so it's probably about $445,000 that are currently sitting in that fund at the moment.
Thank you, Ashley.
No problem.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else who's signed up for public comments? Anybody in the audience on Zoom? Nope. All right. Moving on to our regular agenda item, presentation discussion regarding the Edinburgh Arts and Culture Event Center.
Yes, we have Mr. Tom Reina, who has a presentation, and it will display on the screen. And we also have Edgar Villanueva from ERO Architecture and Engineering if you have any additional questions.
Good afternoon, President, council members, board members, I'm sorry. Tom Reina, Assistant City Manager for the City of Edinburgh. I'm in charge of capital projects throughout the city. So our departments are the ones that are actually doing the project management for this. Also, again, reiterate that we do have Mr. Edgar Villanueva, who's part of ERO Architects. He's actually the project manager for this for us. So I have a brief presentation, and then I'll answer any questions or comments that you might have. Hopefully my presentation would actually address those concerns just shortly. So again, this is a project on the Cultural Arts Building, which is that's the new rendering of the outside during the evenings. We added some lights and some different items so that way that building becomes more prominent. The building itself, the original size when we brought during our workshop was 41,716 square feet. It included 500 tables and chairs, 1,295 seating capacity in the main ballroom, 6 classrooms, 1 lobby, and 1 cafe. As of right now, we're basically down just a bit, 36,800. We still have the 500 tables and chairs. We have 1,280 seating capacity, 6 classrooms, and 1 lobby. The only reason that we've gone down, besides any popular belief, is that we're anticipating these construction costs. So anticipation, we've looked at it because we're averaging 3 to 4% per month of construction costs that's escalating. So for us to be within budget, we decide, okay, we need to move this just a bit, so that way we're prepared for any of those escalation costs. The ballroom originally was 1474. This is where we got our total, which was 13, and then it went down to 1312, but we still have the seating capacity and the standing room and the seating capacity still there. The lobby, this is the original lobby. The current lobby's basically the same. We moved some items around so that way we have a clearer flow. Our studio, we left it pretty much the same. All we did was flip it around completely. So that way we have better flow, we have more room for more staff, and so forth. Our classrooms, we still have the 3 original classrooms, or the 5 original classrooms, and the computer lab. All we did was rearrange them. We just moved the restrooms a little higher, so that way we have an even flow when we divide the ballroom. Here's a couple of renderings that we have. This is the lobby area. I think they did a really good job on that. They presented different options, so this is where we're at this point. This is a rendering of the cafe. The cafe will be open during business hours, utilize the little patio area outside and so forth. This would be the ballroom itself. This one's with the tables and chairs, so we'll be able to sit the 500 people. Also, this one does have the partition down the middle. If you can see in that one slide here down the middle, this is where the partition is going to be coming in through, where we'll be able to divide the two to make them 2 rooms for 2 different events. This is a picture of the offices and one of the classrooms. So we have all of that designed at this point. This is the dance room, and the other classroom is when you open up the classroom, we can make one large classroom if need be at that point. As you can see, the dividers there in the front area. Our budget. Our city budget, this was a bond series 2021A, was $7 million on the city portion. The EDC bond series 2021 was $7 million for a total of $14 million. Right now, we're paying our architectural services $1,016,248. We've paid the geotechnical services of $3,500. We're estimated at this point for our budget to come out at $11,572,660. This is the total cost that we're estimated at this point. That's with an escalation rate and everything already being at that 15%, almost 15% increase. We have for furniture, fixtures, and equipment, FF&E, we have budgeted $1 million to provide any equipment and items that we have on there. This would bring a total that we will still have $407,000 in there for contingencies for extra equipment and just being prepared just in case we do have a large rise of construction costs. Our schedule, this was the original schedule. We're currently on track. We should be finishing up by the 22nd as before. Our new revised schedule has not changed at all. So still on track at that point where we'll have everything ready to go out for bids. And then we would come back, hopefully can start construction by September of this year. And it would be a complete 1-year turnaround. So that's the conclusion of my presentation. If you have any questions for me or the architect, we're willing to answer any of the questions.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it. On the architectural services, has that been already all, like what money has been spent so far, I guess?
Okay, that has not been spent at all. We're not even at 50% yet at that, but we're about 25% of the architectural services cost.
So what do you say the total money that we've spent so far is, like on everything, engineering, architect, design, et cetera?
I would say a good, he'll get that for me in just a little bit.
Okay.
Tom, I have a question. On the architectural services, are they taking into account, every time we change something that we reduce square footage and things, are they, is it costing more money or is that a total fixed, I know it can't be fixed, but is it costing more money every time we're changing and every time we're revising?
No, sir. It would still under that period of the design development. We're still under that period, so it doesn't cost us any more for them to do that at that point. Of course, we always try to be ahead of schedule, so that's why we're always trying to make sure that we meet that deadline, so that way we don't have to come off our schedule. But no, it does not cost us anything to move a wall, move a section, or flip a section around.
But that ends on April 22nd.
That ends April 22nd. We want to be already in construction documents and development already at this point.
So if we go beyond the 12 weeks for the design development, what's the fee structure then?
The fee structure would not change. All that would change would be the bidding calendar, which we would be off our bidding calendar and our projections. Now, what would we run the risk of every month that we go that construction cost is going to escalate? Could be 4%, could be 5%, depending on the trend now. The purpose of having everything ready is to get it ready out for bid, so that way when the bidder comes in, they can secure the price. The most volatile price right now is steel. Steel, if you don't do 6 to 8 months out and upfront pay that cost, those prices are going to fluctuate from here till the next hour or so.
And the ballroom decreased in size. I know the cultural arts folks, the classrooms and the other things they wanted, that's decreased in size as well, or just?
Yes, ma'am, everything actually.
Everything had to be?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so, because I know, and I may have missed one of the meetings, but I know when we did our joint meeting, they were wanting more than what was initially offered. Is that still the case now, or is that?
No, ma'am. I've already solved that. We said, okay, guys, we're at the point where we have no return. Mr. Govin was there at that time when told them, this is it. We're no longer deviating at this point. We need to move forward. So we've paid $174,0653 in architectural services at this point.
Is
Bill
that
to
just
date.
architecture, or is that everything, like total?
That's architectural.
So what
And
have we
then the
spent?
other one was the 3,500. That's all we've paid at that point.
So roughly 180,000.
Yes, sir. Which we were really lucky in finding ERO. They understand the process. That's why they put their timeline in that sort of list. So that way we prepare to, of course, they know that things will change.
Now, Tom, you mentioned this is the cost of construction, but what about the cost to sustain or manage the building or anything? Have we calculated what those costs are going to be?
At that point, that's actually phase two. Once we finish up the construction plans, now we start to development our operations plan on who's going to operate it, how is this going to sustain, how at those points. That is actually phase two once I get past the design. So that way we understand how many staff members we're going to have to fill it. What is the funny part is, what is the insurance requirement for this building? Who's going to be putting it up? And that's phase two of actually the development on how and we have not started that as of yet.
So we don't have a tentative operations budget at this point?
At this point, we do not. We'll be working on that within the next month, which I have to get with the Cultural Arts Department, which are the ones that would be manning most of the building and operating the building.
Do they have the staff for that?
Yes, they actually have a staff for that now.
Is it a paid staff?
It's a paid staff, yes, sir. They're the ones that actually operate all the events through the city.
Now, I understand that the teachers or the instructors are going to be volunteer instructors? Basically?
That is, as one of the professors did mention, but I think Ms. Gonzalez did bring that up to him. So that is, again, on the operational side portion. Until we start developing that, then I would actually have an understanding on how are they going to operate it. So if during the development, once we start doing the operation plan, if they're not able to staff that room, I get to rent that room out. So that way we're prepared to make up some of those costs because of those areas could be actually divided for another event or anything to this aspect. Just to let you know, just because we're saying that they're classrooms, they're going to be multi-use facility. It's going to be able to be either we have a conference, we have breakout rooms, we'll be able to utilize all of that at that point.
On the FF&E, I see that basically 800,000 is tables and chairs. How much are we estimating to finish the building?
Depends on the rooms, and that also depends on the funding that they're going to raise, the cultural arts. They're going to be starting their funding program, which is part of our operational plan, is where they're going to try to raise the funding to do all the classrooms and all the equipment for the classrooms. So we also have that amount to play with also for the 407,000 that we have. Hopefully we get a great bid that I'll be able to utilize any of those additional funds for that. At the same time, I've also expressed to the library, we're in the budget process coming up for the budget process where we're going to also budget ahead of time for our general operating funds to ask for that additional funding also.
When Ashley came up earlier, she was talking about having all their equipment, everything over here. Did you, and I guess because they have to make sure that all of the hearings, all of the commission meetings are live for the public to watch, right? So do you still have within the plans that they would move to this new building, or do you have them remaining here?
That again is part of our operational plan. We are suggesting, just to be a suggestion to City Council, to be ultimately their ultimate choice to remain them here. That way, it's going to be a great expense to remove some of the items that we have to the new building and to come back. So when we first started planning the building, that was part of them that we did want to move a little bit out there to have a little bit more equipment, but we cannot intermix those fundings together. So we're ultimately saying that we would prefer them to stay here, and that way we can get that, show what exactly we need for that building for it to be fully operational.
So free up that space, and then that space would be used as also for cultural arts, though, is that correct?
If they need to. If not, again, once we develop the organizational or the operations plan, then we could say again, those are all rental spots at the same time.
So on the audio-visual computer equipment, do we have, like, there's a whole page of items that say
Right.
for by owner with no price on it. We got to have a cost estimate on all this, right?
Yes, we actually do have one, but again, it's not being funded through this project.
So, but how much would it cost? Because who's going to pay for it?
That would be the end user at that time, would be the one paying for that.
So, cultural arts?
If that what turns out to be on the operational plans, yes, it would be under cultural arts.
Do we have any kind of estimate?
Actually, we do have an estimate.
Yeah.
$2.4.
2.4, and that includes computers.
That's if, yes,
Lighting.
if we're gonna fully equip those other sections, yes. But for sure, what we do have is we're gonna use all the audio and visual for the ballroom, the lobby, the computer lab, I believe, one of the computer labs, and then the cafes.
So the 2.4 would include like a finished
Everything else, correct.
everything. So, yeah, please come up. You might,
I would like to clarify that equipment involves all the AV equipment.
if you don't mind stating your name for the record as well, please.
My name's Edgar Villanueva with ERO Architects. That budget is for the AV projectors, the infrastructure to host all the lighting, not computers or servers or any of that. That should be, I believe, off city.
Yes.
So with 2.4, sorry, one more time, it's
AV equipment.
AV equipment.
So all the audio and visual, like projectors, lighting for the ballroom, for the lobby area, all that equipment itself. And we'll have a full breakdown of everything that's included.
For the speakers,
Yeah, all the speakers, all that,
screens.
the systems that it takes to run those individual ballrooms separately or together, the stage area fully equipped, all that.
Oh, that's really good.
Yep.
And that's, so what would it be for the rest of the building as far as computers, the back room where the media department, I think, is going to go, or?
For computers and servers, that's typically done by the owner. It just depends. I mean, we don't have a whole lot of office spaces, but I mean, you're talking about, we have a computer lab for 10 people and about 8 offices. Not a whole lot of computers. And then the server itself, I think that'd be more of a IT director question.
And all that's already appropriated for the library, so they'll be moving their computers and stuff to this building for those labs.
And then like, I don't know, Wi-Fi, all that,
That's included.
that's included, okay.
Yeah.
Tom, I have a question that is, not to say this would ever happen, but just exploring possibilities here. If we were to say, because I know the city had $7 million to spend for the cultural arts, and then we had $7 million to spend for an event center, and we were trying to marry the two into one building, is it possible to separate the two to where cultural arts has their building, event center is located somewhere else? And what would that do in terms of throwing off
Everything.
everything? In terms of,
Unfortunately,
yeah.
$7 million is not going to get you a very large building anymore. And then on top of that, I would have to renegotiate fees for the architect, because now we're designing 2 separate spaces. So basically, we would probably get about a $3.5 million building, which is not a very large building that we would have to look at. And not only that, on the property that you're looking for, you would have to do purchasing of property for new property. This is where we're saving a large amount of, since we already have city property. Just to give you an instance, we're looking at small strips of property. We're looking at about $2 million. For the size of this property, we're looking negotiating on another property, and it's about 2.8 million. So that's, out of that 7 million, you still need to look at that portion also, what we have to do. And then, of course, new property, look at infrastructure, water, sewer. If we have to rezone it, replat it, it all varies on the different type of land that we want to look at. But yes, we would have to hold everything and then start from scratch at that point.
I have a concern, Tom. It's been twice already that you guys have mentioned this event center as a ballroom. And I want to know what it is, because we were sold on an event center. That's
Yes,
what
sir.
that's what we
It's
wanted.
both. It's
But-
just,
But we
that's,
call it a ballroom, and there's a little bit of a difference as to how the corporate world proceeds.
yeah,
Okay.
the room we're looking at as, we could ultimately rent it out ballroom, but we'll be able to stretch it out and divide it up into separate spaces, use the classrooms so we could have different conference rooms, conference things. All of that is just, again, on the operational plan and how we're going to do that. But yes, it's meant for both.
Right.
For
Because
both.
what I'm afraid of is that we're reducing square footage, and it's getting smaller, and it's going to be too big for a quinceañera and too small for an event, for a corporate event, you know. And
This
that's
thing is-
basically what I thought was our intention, was to attract that type of events to Edinburgh, that we'd have a
And we'll
place to-
still have that availability with that, but again, we're looking at it as a multifunctional building. This is what our ultimate goal is. Not only is it only going to serve this, we have the capability of serving so much more.
And that phase two, not having any idea on it yet, scares me a little bit. Like operationally, sustainability, not,
But again, that does come with developing the schematics and the plans before we get to that one, because we don't want to plan for something that it's not going to be there. Now we know exactly this is going to be there. This is the type of operations we want, so that helps us budget that item at the same time.
This might be a question for Omar, like speaking to Veronica's thought there. If they were to separate it, does it have to be together? Does it have to be in the same area? Does it have to be in the city of Edinburgh?
Well, so we do have bond counsel on the line as well.
Okay.
And so some of this is dependent on some of that bond language. So I'll let him start off with this and fill in any gaps if there are any.
Yes, we have Mr. Arnold Cantu, Bond Counsel.
Thank you, Mr. President. For the record, Arnold Cantu with Cantu Harding LLP. The ordinance that authorized the COs and the EDC sales tax bond order both have a purpose for a multi-purpose facility, which is for use as a conference, cultural arts, performance, and events facility center. So absent more specific details about what each separate item, what each separate building would encompass, there may be some issues there as far as what we provided notice for the purposes. Now, conceivably they could be separated, but they can't. Either project would have to be within the scope of the purposes listed in the authorizing documents, which is a multi-purpose facility for use as administrative office, departmental office, cultural arts performance center. Now, as far as location, the main concern there is that both facilities have to be owned by the city. They could be separate, but they'd have to be owned by the city and within city boundaries. There's no geographical limitation on those projects.
So if, just to speak, I get, the city would own the Cultural Arts Center and the office space, and then the events space moved to another location, they would have to own that space, even if it was attached to another building.
Yes, yes.
And you said it would have to be within the city, but does it have to be within the downtown area? What are the parameters?
The parameters for the ACE building or any variation thereof is not strictly limited to downtown. That downtown limitation is specific only to the parking facilities.
And I don't know who answers this question, but on operations side, does it have to be city staff that operates it? Can it be a third party? Can it be a private citizen? I don't know
Let
if
me
there's
pull
any
that.
restrictions
pull
there.
that.
while that's looking up, Mr. Rivera, I do have a comment on the only reason it's shrunk in size is projected of escalation cost. That's not projected to any other function or anything. That is the only reason we have to be prepared to take that brunt of that cost. So that's the only reason why we were at this point.
And he's 100% correct on steel. It's gone up. It's literally doubled in price in a year. And
So on our another hat that we usually wear is where it's even deferring me from not doing a project because I won't have enough funding for it. So I'm looking at supplementing other projects to get away from that because it's a real threat at this point.
Right.
Do you happen to know, Tom, the square footage of other ballrooms in other cities, event centers?
I do not, but I know we had an old presentation. If you give me an opportunity, I can find some.
Okay. I'm just curious to see, I know we're at 13,000 square feet, how that compares to what we may have in Harlingen, what you might see in, I know the McAllen one's very large, but what do you see and
Well, what worries me now
comparables?
is just at today's dollar.
Yeah, it could shrink.
There's no way we can afford at this point a larger one because of these volatile prices. So yes, we can look it up. I can provide you that information, but honestly, at that point, we would have to invest more money into the project if we want to get at a bigger footprint of it.
Right, yeah, I do remember the comparisons, and we were in the market of being larger than our sister cities, of course, not larger than the McAllen venue. And that was kind of my question, make sure we're still in that market. But to address Ron's concern, Ron, don't forget that there's the divider, so we can be twice as big or half the size. So it can accommodate a smaller quinceañera or a larger venue.
But it won't give us more square footage than what we've got designated.
No.
Right.
It'll
We get
divide
smaller.
the square footage in half. But on that note, Tom, I was trying to find, we all know that divider is very expensive. I didn't see it here in the,
No, sir, I didn't put it. We actually found a less expensive option than the $1 million one that we had provided the first time. And I think, Edgar, do you remember how much that one was? For the partition?
the partition.
We were able to find another one that was the
Oh.
same level at 250. So
Good.
that's why we're looking at all options to try to bring it down so that way we can look
the
at.
square footage.
Yes,
at 250, it still has the same sound
yes, sir,
barrier.
correct.
to
Still met
deliver.
the specifications at that point.
And there's $1 million for furniture. That includes all the tables and chairs, coverings for the event center area
Correct,
also?
sir, correct.
Sorry, Mr. Cantu, did you have the answer to that question?
Thanks. So pursuant to the agreement signed between the EDC and the city governing the financing and use of the project, the city has the final say on the management of the project, but they're not precluded from hiring a third party to manage that. I should note that those operational costs for a third party manager would most likely not be an appropriate use of bond proceeds.
It would have to be out of our operating cost,
Understood.
not out of the construction cost.
And let's say they do get split. Can private money or more governmental money or any other outside funding be teamed up to fill in the gap?
Potentially, yes. I mean, there are some tax considerations when you realize that these bonds were issued on a tax-exempt basis. And so they need to specifically effectuate a public purpose and not give any benefit or outsized benefit to a private entity. So depending on where that private money is coming from, or if it's in exchange for other goods or services, or beneficial use of the project, there could be issues there. But in a general sense, you should be free to collect money from external sources to the extent that it would help in the construction of the projects. The proceeds of the bonds, though, have to be used specifically for the projects themselves.
Understood.
So yeah, so keep this in mind. If we're building, this is the amount of square footage that we're projecting, and we're going to utilize almost $12 million. Imagine the size of building that we're going to project if we do less than $7 million. Because I still have to pay the professional services out of that $7 million, each individual one. So this would almost basically shrink the area down very significantly.
Yeah, and Tom, I still share my concern with regards to having an expensive ballroom, and not really meeting the expectations of an event center. For our one of our duties with the board that we're in is in bringing businesses in, having conferences. That's what we want. That's what I know that quinceañeras are nice and weddings are nice, and the arts culture is nice, and it's very important to the city. But my responsibility is to try to see what we can do to bring in businesses to Edinburgh, to have events in Edinburgh, spend money in Edinburgh. And I think that what I'm afraid of is that we're going to end up with a building that's not adequate enough, or space is not.
Well, Mr. Rivera, what also concerns is we had the opportunity during our workshops to voice these out, and I think we all agreed on that original layout. And I really wish we would have had a little bit more insight on that. That way we can see, maybe we could look at it, divide it into 4, a ballroom, but you're still providing those additional options. So that's, now at this point, we're a little bit, we'll be really behind schedule at this point if we do make any more additional schematic changes to it. I mean, it could be an option that we could look like, we can build to be functionally ready to do something like that, where we can divide it with divide each half into 2, maybe do 4 for future growth, but not put it in right now, and then we see how that operation starts working out, and then we certainly can develop the building into that aspect.
I think where things got lost back then was the actual monies. Like, I'll be honest, I thought this $2.4 million to get AV equipment was included. I thought all the computer equipment, servers was included. But, let's call it $1 million for servers and all that, and 2.4 here. We potentially had $3.4 million that needs to come from someone
Right,
to
and
occupy the building.
that's part of, our part was, let's build the building, and then on our operation plan is where I have to address those items, which I'm going to address. This is what we're going to do. Usually, on a regular building, like I say, I'm getting ready to do our new service center. I already know what's going to be staffed there, who needs to be there, how many computers I have to have, what equipment I have. So I'm building that into my preliminary budget. At this point, when we designed or we thought about this building, was more as, okay, we're going to get this, then we'll realize on the operation plan how to do this at this point. So depending, that's what I'm saying. We could say, you know what, cultural arts is just going to have a section of this area. Again, it would be up to City Council to approve that operational plan, how we're going to actually operate the building. That has been decided at this point.
Is there room either around the building or the possibility of a second floor? I'm not saying for now, I'm talking about over time. Should we decide that we need a larger event center and cultural arts could move into a building that's attached or upstairs or something of that nature?
At this point, only the section where we had the patio is structurally ready to add a second floor to the patio. And the entire building, no, we're not designing it to go up another floor at that point. That usually does increase costs because we do have to do piers. A great example is we're preparing our parking structure. We have enough to do 3, but we're going to have it get ready to build 3 more on top of that. So we're already setting the piers and the foundation in, ready to add an additional 3. So those are the kind of items that we have that we did not talk about adding an additional floor to that building.
And space around it, there's nothing available aside from the coffee shop or?
Correct.
I guess one thing that concerned me on the design was the pre-function space in the lobby now. The gift shop is no longer, the coffee space, the food prep area and bar. and things like that. Most event centers have that pre-function space in the front for smaller meetings and things like that. Now it looks more just like a regular lobby. I thought that was a little bit of a concern, because small meetings, I know that we went to the Mission one. It's a very large area that could be a pre-function area, and it has a lot of extra facilities. That was one of the main concerns I saw in that area. It's not multifunctional anymore, in my opinion. So if we get to the end of the design phase and ready for construction, what would it cost to get to August 17th, I think you had it at? So notice to proceed, what do you think we're going to spend and what the total spend would be on August 17th, like up to that point?
It just depends on the architecturals, their fee structure and how they'll be building at that point. Could be additional 24, could be additional 25. It depends on their fee schedule.
So worst case scenario being $1,020,000?
Less.
Less.
It'd be less.
So when does y'all hit 100%, I guess?
It would be after the construction management, after the building is done. They'll
Okay.
hit the $1 million at that point. Because they have to certify the walkthrough, all the warranties, everything that is complete for the building, ready to be accepted,
So all the way through.
all the way through.
As you know, my main concern's been budget, operations, cost all the way through. So that's still our number one concern. And now it's functionability is really coming into play at the end now. As we're getting a little smaller, we're changing things around. And from what we started with a year ago to now, a lot of things have changed. So that's why I wanted to make sure. A lot of people were asking me questions all across. That was the main purpose of this. Let's get everyone caught up and up to speed and ask the questions that need to be asked or that they want to ask.
Yes, sir.
Has the CAT board seen this already?
Yes, sir.
And they were okay with it?
I don't know if I saw it on here. Was there an entrance, separate entrance, so that people that are coming in for the cultural arts are not necessarily coming, do they all come through the lobby, or do they have separate entrances?
They have also separate entrances, which is here. Right in between, they'll be coming off of 7th Street, or 8th Street, I'm sorry.
It's on the west side of the building.
Okay. I know that was a concern we had about if you do have an event
Yes,
going
sir,
on.
we will
you
be
didn't
able to
wanna have-
filter them that way.
The walls in between the classrooms, event center, and then the back area where staff will be housed, we gonna have extra sound barriers or things of that nature?
Correct, yes, so they'll have all of that, and then there'll be access control between where staff is and the open areas.
What Ashley mentioned on the PEG funding was also a bit of a shock for me. I thought we were gonna be able to utilize that to help everyone. Anybody else have any questions for Tom or anybody else here?
We still have the bathrooms in the front, correct, Tom?
Yes, sir,
For in case we have to divide it?
correct. We added more restrooms.
Yeah, and to the president's point, I think I see, isn't that little gift shop area there in the front, in the lobby, or what is that? That's there, right?
Yes, sir. Which would be here in this area here.
Well, whenever they're separated, how do you get to the back?
There'll be access control doors right here, sir.
So we would leave those open?
No, they'll be closed, and then if you have an event at that time, a great example is if you've been to Parks and Rec, we have, where the boxing gym and the basketball gyms, we have that open during when it's open to the public. They can go in at that point. If they don't, we have access control on it.
Anybody else have any questions, comments?
No, fine. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Appreciate it, Tom. Blanco, I know that we had asked the board for questions. Were any of those not answered?
I know Ms. Veronica Gonzalez had a list of questions that were shared with the bond counsel and the financial advisor. I know you asked a couple of questions right now. Would you like to ask more questions now, or?
No, because the questions I had to do with if we were to separate out the two, and it sounds like at this point, we'd end up with nothing. I mean, or much harder to get anything because we'd have to wait. And then there's the issue about not being able to, I guess it has to be a partner that would be because of the taxes as well. So that kind of that's where my questions were leading, if we were to have a separate event center from a cultural arts center, because I remember the meeting I attended, the cultural arts folks were not very happy with what they were getting. They felt that they were being downsized quite a bit, and neither one of us wanted to be downsized significantly. And you're telling us now, though, Tom, that they're satisfied with what they're receiving. And so then it's a matter of can we live with what we're getting for the event center. And so that's where my questions were headed. So I think they've been answered. Thank you.
Anybody else? Nope. All right. We don't have anything for executive, right? So I can just skip over that section.
Correct, yeah.
All right. If there's no other questions, comments, or concerns, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time. I think we got a bunch of food for